Welcome into Off the Hook Sports. I am your host, Caleb Calhoun. A lot to get to today as Tennessee finished its first scrimmage ahead of football season over the weekend. That was the first scrimmage of fall camp. We also have news of an arrest to get to that is not good news for Tennessee. We're going to discuss that. On top of both of those things, we're going to discuss more stories about expectations surrounding the Vols. Seems like Josh Pate and ESPN are both low on Tennessee now, and it said some negative things. We're going to get to that. Derek Rogers throws a direct shot at Derek Dooley. Here for the spice. We're going to talk about that. And also, Jon Gruden and Jimbo Fisher both opened up this past weekend, hinting that they want to get back into coaching. Gruden saying he is dying to coach in the SEC. I'll tell you what, that's ironic. And Jimbo Fisher saying he's got a lot to offer and he wants to get back into coaching too. Kind of interesting on both fronts. I'm going to talk about what that means. So hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn on your notifications. We are brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. We broadcast to you live every weekday at 10 a.m. Eastern from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. Let's get rolling with today's tough question, and it involves some news that happened the other night. Chris Brazzell, expected to be one of Tennessee's starting wide receivers, the only returning wide receiver who had any significant production last year, has been arrested on charges of driving on a suspended license. According to the Knoxville News Sentinel, Brazzell, who had 29 catches for 333 yards last year, and who has not been a full participant at practice this preseason because he's rehabbing from an unspecified injury, was pulled over at about 8:57 p.m. Friday night after police clocked him driving at 60 miles an hour in a 35-mile-an-hour zone in a black Dodge Charger across the Henley Street Bridge in downtown Knoxville near UT's campus. Brazzell had a U.S. passport, but he told officers he didn't have his driver's license with him. The officer then checked the motor vehicle records, which revealed Brazzell's license was suspended for failing to appear in court in Blount County on August the 15th in 2024. Due to his history of not appearing in court, he was placed under arrest. How big of a deal, and this is today's tough question, and I set up the poll question now. How big of a deal is Vols receiver Chris Brazzell II's arrest? You guys can say huge. You can say no worries. Vols are fine at wide receiver. Guys, this is the third red flag we've heard about Chris Brazzell this offseason. And again, he's Tennessee's leading receiver. We had heard reports from, I believe, Tony Basilio, but I could be wrong. It could be somebody else. So I think it was Tony Basilio, though. But we've heard reports that Chris Brazzell was not fully committed in practice and just didn't have that work ethic necessary to take the next step. We had then also heard about him being held out of practice due to unspecified injuries. Now he's been arrested. That's like 3 strikes against him in the sense of I'm not believing he's going to be able to be a big contributor this year. Chris Brazzell, the way I thought the Tennessee receiver room was going to work was Chris Brazzell would be the possession receiver on the wideout as the number 2 wideout, kind of the Ramel Keaton type, because he can win those one-on-one battles and he's got great hands. I thought Mike Matthews would be the breakout star as the go-to wideout who dictates coverage because of his elite talent as the number 1 wideout. And then I thought Braylon Staley would play in the slot, alternating with Boo Carter, which would spread the field a lot more. Tennessee now, with this arrest, there are some issues and there are some major questions regarding Chris Brazzell. So how big of a deal is this overall? I'm going to say it's a huge deal. And it's a huge deal because of the other things that have been reported about Chris Brazzell this offseason. There are just too many things working against him to believe that he is going to be able to be a regular rotational guy and the go-to wideout for Tennessee as the number 2 guy. If that's the case, Tennessee's in big trouble at receiver, guys. Look, I've talked about this before, but if Brazzell and Matthews can't go, if either one of them can't go, Tennessee's either got to turn to a true freshman or a walk-on in Trey Weary to step into that role. The wide receiver position is very hard for true freshmen to pick up in Josh Heupel's system. It's much harder than it is for quarterbacks, believe it or not. Quarterbacks just have to read a safety. Wide receivers have to read the safety, read the cornerback, and assume that their quarterback that they're going to run where their quarterback expects them to run. That the quarterback expects them to run the way in which they're running because there's a lot of option routes. And the ball is thrown before they break on their route. Here's the problem with all of this. There's nowhere to turn, really. I get the hype behind Travis Smith Jr. and Darius Jackson. A lot of hype, a lot of promise. That's there. Joaquin Dotson was a 3-star and enrolled in fall camp. He won't be ready to go. But the hype with Smith and Jackson, they still, I think, need a year to develop. Trey Weary, at the end of the day, is still a walk-on. Amari Jefferson is recovering from an injury. He was never supposed to go this year. This was always supposed to be a year where he just takes off, gets fully healthy, and breaks out next year for Tennessee. So yeah, Chris Brazzell, this arrest is a big deal because it's the latest in a string of things that have been happening with Brazzell. And I think that's the real problem here. So I think that there's a lot of reason to worry about Brazzell going forward. And look, the question I have is, and this is the big one, why did he fail to appear in court back in August of last year? I haven't pulled the police records. I don't know. But he failed. He was supposed to appear in court in August of 2024 in Blount County. And again, I think the weird part about that is if that's the case, one, what was he doing in Blount County? It's not Knox County. And I know it's where Maryville is, but still, so it's not too far away. I understand that, guys, and it's in the Knoxville metro area. But at the same time, Chris Brazzell's not from Tennessee. He's from Texas. So you have to question what's going on there. And then you have to question why he had to appear in court in the first place. And then he's driving under a suspended license and didn't tell anybody. There could be more there. And when you add in what Basilio said and the reports of him being banged up in spring practice, yes, this is the big deal. There's plenty of reasons to be concerned. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
The poll question up. How big of a deal is Vols wide receiver Chris Brazzell II's arrest? 37% of you say huge. 63% say no worries. Vols are fine at wide receiver. I have to say huge. I think it's a big deal, guys. I think it's a really big concern. Now, a few comments. I want to point out, I'm going to start with Timothy McGee. He has the best point. 65 and a 30, that's reckless driving and on a suspended license. I get you guys are pointing out victimless crime and just a suspended license, but he's also, if you don't have your license with you, why are you driving 65 and a 35? One, you're already breaking the law, and I'm not going to be like some Boy Scout here and say, oh my God, you always have to follow the law. Although again, you should, if you fail to appear in court, if you have an outstanding warrant because you didn't appear in a court, and if you are driving without a license and it's suspended, maybe reckless driving is not the smartest thing for you to do. 65 and a 35, that's kind of stupid. Now, I get it. We've all driven in places where the speed limit slows down really fast and it's hard to really slow down. But come on, you got to be very, very, very careful. I just that alone makes you question his decision making. So there is that. Blind Squirrel Sports has joined the chat. As a Georgia fan, I will refrain from commenting on an alleged player arrest. Blind Squirrel Sports, thank you. I will say the Georgia situation, there is literally a road for drag racing in Georgia. And there's no culture like that in Tennessee. So it's actually weirdly, I would say, outside of the horrible accident that happened, it's like this one's just more baffling with Chris Brazzell. Sam Schrock says, Amari Jefferson has been fully healthy since late April. Yes, but Sam, he didn't practice with the team in the spring. He's not, again, he's only a redshirt freshman, so he's not going to pick up the job and the nuances of playing receiver in just fall camp and Josh Heupel's system. It's more complex than we realize and than a lot of people understand. I want to go Orange Blood with the funniest quote of the day. The way he drives, he can make both county appearances in the same day. Well played, Orange Blood. Well played. Bender Strings, why do we not go any after wide receivers in the portal? Well, Bender Strings, I actually think the depth was fine at wide receiver at the start. I do. I think what's happened recently has been a little bit crazy and it's thrown a lot of people off. So Sam adds that he was out there practicing today, so it's a complete non-issue. But Sam, there's still there's multiple things going on here. So I think there is a lot of questions that are being asked because of so many things. Again, the reports that he wasn't that dedicated, the reports that he has been banged up and been missing practice, and then this arrest. These are all big deals. And that he had an outstanding warrant for a court date that he skipped back in August of 2024. Derek Owens Jr. says money is easily affecting these kids' decisions. Shaking my head. You can attend traffic court virtually now. Like, what the H? Straight procrastination. No, I agree, Derek. And while I've always been for players getting paid, and I'm still very much big on the NIL circuit, and I'm huge on it, I'm fine with listening to an argument that maybe all the money that players make in NIL goes into a trust and they can't touch it until after they graduate college. Just so, they have all their expenses and their needs covered while they're playing college. And also when that happens, the money accrues over the few years. So I totally agree. Dylan says, I have a feeling it was a speed trap zone or a school zone and the limit dropped from 55 to 35. Yeah, Dylan, I mean, that happens. I agree, but you got to be careful. And it was 16 to 35, Sam. You're right. So it is a speed trap based on people who know the area. I understand that. But I would also say, Dylan, you say we freaked out last year when Pierce got arrested last all season and he didn't miss a beat last year besides getting held and doubled every game. Yes, true. Pierce didn't have an outstanding court date. Pierce wasn't being accused of being lazy in practice. Pierce was not banged up. Very, very, very different from this situation. It is a concern. I just have to, I'm sorry. There's just no way to get around it. It's a concern. Portions of the program are brought to you by Chattanooga Mortgage. Congratulations, your home search just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Chat with 2tsmortgage.com. Chat with 2tsmortgage.com. Hit that like and subscribe button. We move on to Tennessee football's scrimmage. The Vols had their first scrimmage of fall camp over the weekend. And a lot of stories came out of that, even though it was closed to the public. A lot of insider reporting came out based on that and what Josh Heupel said. That is very revealing, and we're going to discuss what exactly happened at that scrimmage and the biggest story among everything there. So this is 4 Downs, brought to you by Ted Russell Ford Lincoln. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville. New and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. Tennessee's first scrimmage of fall camp for 2025 had a lot of revealing points, and we're going to get to those now. First, a quick message from Cooper Mays. Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe. Thank you, Coop. For those who don't know, again, I bring this up every time. The reason I'm doing the Cooper Mays voice is when Dave Hooker is on, and he's out right now, but when he's on, he's got the board, he's got the sound effect board, and we have Cooper Mays' voice dubbed in to do the 4 Downs. But since I don't have the board, I am intimidating Cooper. Not intimidating. I am imitating Cooper Mays to have a little fun. So again, Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe. Scrimmage recap for Tennessee on fall camp. It is 4 Downs, brought to you by Ted Russell Ford. We get rolling with first down. Coop here. First down. Biggest story of the day. George McIntyre had the best day of the scrimmage. Apparently, George McIntyre balled out. And this gets to my point with Josh Heupel, and Joey Aguilar, and Jake Merklinger, and everything I've been saying. Josh Heupel is politicking with his quarterback race right now. Because before George McIntyre had the best day on Saturday, we had reports come out that he had already been relegated to the 3rd team only a week into fall camp. Why? Because Josh Heupel doesn't want to name him the starter this year. Why? If you name him the starter this year, you got to make him the starter next year. And Faison Brandon's coming next year. And Josh Heupel wants an open competition between McIntyre and Faison Brandon, and even Jake Merklinger, hence the reason Jake Merklinger is not going to be the starter. This is why Joey Aguilar is going to be the starting quarterback no matter what. And I think it's kind of ridiculous. But, there was a report that came out that sources told on 3 that Aguilar has been taking the vast majority of the first team reps, and Merklinger is still in the fight, working with the second team with McIntyre with the third. We knew McIntyre was with the third, but it's very clear Aguilar holds the edge. He holds the edge because Josh Heupel doesn't want to have to start Merklinger or McIntyre, because if he does, he can't have an open competition next year when both of them come back and Faison Brandon is on the team. Here's where Josh Heupel is screwed. McIntyre has more potential than Merklinger. He believes Brandon has more potential than McIntyre. But of the most ready guys this year to start, it could potentially be Merklinger or McIntyre. And if he starts either of them, Then he's going to enter fall camp next year or spring practice next year with a quarterback who started the whole season this year. And then 2 other quarterbacks who might actually be better than him by that point. Heupel doesn't want that. So Heupel's not running a fair race. And the fact that George McIntyre had the best fall camp or had the best scrimmage tells me that. I said back in the summer, Tennessee should not have gone for a transfer quarterback. They should have upgraded elsewhere and gone ahead and gone all in with George McIntyre as their starting quarterback. He's their future anyway. They believe in him. But Heupel didn't want to do that because he wants the open competition next year with Merklinger, Brandon, and McIntyre. And I got to be honest, this politicking is bad, in my opinion. McIntyre should be the starter. He's the best player on the team. Cooper Mays here. Second down. One of the things that really stood out over the weekend with this was the center position. Now, the center position, we know Tennessee has to replace 4 offensive linemen. We're pretty sure one of them is returning, Lance Hurd, so he's got the left tackle spot locked up. We're pretty sure David Sanders, the true freshman, is going to lock up the right tackle spot. He's a phenom. Josh Heupel went and added 2 transfer guards to replace the interior line, where Tennessee lost key players in Javonte Spraggins, Andre Carrick, and obviously Cooper Mays. So he went and got Sam Pendleton, the Notre Dame transfer. He went and got Wendell Moore Jr., the Arizona transfer. And he was going to work those 2 in, but then he was going to have to start somebody that he signed out of high school for the first time since he's been at Tennessee. Yes, to this point, there has not been an offensive lineman that Josh Heupel signed out of high school start for the Vols under Josh Heupel. It's kind of crazy. So he's going to have to start somebody there. It was going to be either William Satterwhite, Max Anderson, maybe Gage Ginther. We don't know. It looks like William Satterwhite was emerging. So the question, though, has now become who's going to start at center. Because I thought it was going to be William Satterwhite at center and Pendleton and Moe at the 2 guard spots. Well, it looks like Moe is locked in on a guard spot. And the center position is a competition between Satterwhite and Pendleton. That could be a concern that it's a competition now. That means I think it's more they don't know. No one's standing out. No one's doing a good job because I think they would like to find the center quickly so they could establish the cadence with the quarterback and everything like that. The fact that they haven't found their center means no one stepped up to be good enough because both of them could start. The other one could start at guard if he's a little bit behind. I think they think both are good blockers. But I think it's a very big concern that they haven't found their center yet. And I think that's a lot that opens up the door for a lot of issues going forward. So I think this one is a giant concern. The center position is being open. So I'm going to set up the poll question now, which is because those are the 2 biggest shocking ones. What stands out more to you? What's a bigger story from the Vols first scrimmage? George McIntyre being the best QB or no starting center yet? All right, you guys let me know on that. That's the poll question now. Those are the top 2. But now, Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down. Third down is this. Who was out on the field and who wasn't due to injury? Mike Matthews practiced. Looks like that injury to Mike Matthews is no big deal. So Tennessee's fine there. And he's the most important receiver on this team because he's the one that dictates coverage. Jamal McCoy was held out. Not a surprise. We just detailed the Chris Brazzell situation. He was already being limited, so he was held out. I think the biggest story, though, is that Braylon Staley was held out. Braylon Staley is supposed to be Tennessee's main slot guy. He's supposed to break out this year after riding the bench behind Squirrel White last year. And the talent level for him is through the roof. So not having him out there is a really big concern. And it suggests that Tennessee's going to turn somewhere else for the slot, even though that didn't show up over the weekend. And that's going to bring us to 4th down. First, 4 downs brought to you by Ted Russell Ford Lincoln. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville. New and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer.
A beacon of hope in a world of high prices. Look to the skies, Knoxville. Super savings is here. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 volume Ford dealer.
Right now, get 0% APR, 0 down, and 0 payments for 90 days on select models, plus 2 years complimentary maintenance.
Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
All SEC Center, Cooper Mays here. 4th down. Man, I do a good impression. 4th down. Boo Carter participated. Now, Josh Heupel, who just is cagey about everything, said Boo Carter is still day-to-day. However, after working by himself for a week, he was back at full practice with everybody last week, and then he took part in the scrimmage full-time on Saturday. He is obviously the starting nickel. He's going to be the starting nickel. Josh Heupel can say what he wants. That part's very clear. At this point, he's going to be a full-time two-way player, too. Tennessee has no other options in the slot outside of a freshman. They're not ready to start a freshman, or Amari Jefferson, who I just said was injured in the spring and isn't ready to pick up the offense at full go yet. Boo Carter is going to be the main slot receiver for Tennessee in 2025, at least in September. Crazy to think about, but the fact that Boo Carter's back at full practice, they're ready to let bygones be bygones. The poll question, what's the bigger story from the Vols first scrimmage? George McIntyre being the best quarterback is 48%. No starting center yet is 52%. Eileen, no starting center too, even though I have issues with the whole George McIntyre thing. But we'll see how that goes. But at the same time, yes, I think Boo Carter is going to end up being the main slot guy early on. And all the talk I gave you guys about Boo Carter earlier in the year looks more and more crucial now. And it looks like Boo Carter is going to get his way because Tennessee has to make him get his way, give him his way because of their situation at the slot receiver position. May not be something they wanted to do, but it looks like something they didn't have the choice of doing. And so we're going to have to see how that plays out. But I think the biggest stories still, George McIntyre is the best quarterback on this roster. He's the best quarterback on this roster. This offense is easy to pick up. He should be starting, even if he is only 195 pounds. I think by the start of fall camp, I think by the start of the season, you could have easily gotten him up to 200, 205 pounds. George McIntyre should be starting right now. Okay. I'm sorry. That's just how it is. He's the best quarterback. And I would probably do William Satterwhite at center because he's familiar with the offense, move Sam Pendleton over to guard. But we'll see how that goes going forward. I'm not qualified enough to know the inner workings of the offensive line to know who's the best for that. Portions of the program are brought to you by Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. HempHouseChatWith2Ts.com, HempHouseChatWith2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. When we come back, we're going to discuss expectations surrounding Tennessee because they seem to still have a lot of haters. And we're going to talk about what that all means. Stick with us 2 minutes off the Hook Sports.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
Hello, ma'am. I'm here to look at that plumbing problem.
Oh boy. Yep, you're gonna need a whole new sink.
If this toilet is no good, you're gonna need a new one ASAP.
You are not gonna believe this.
You're all out of milk. Have you heard about our service plan?
I need to call Scott's.
Scott's Plumbing, your trusted neighborhood plumber since 1977.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Welcome back to Off the Hook Sports. Caleb Calhoun here. Hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn on your notifications. Again, we are building something great here at Off the Hook. We want you to be a part of it. So please, 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 again, hit that like and subscribe button. A lot going on in college football right now. So we're going to keep things rolling a little bit. It is time we're going to go with this day in Tennessee sports history. And it's one from the weekend I want to do, because on August the 9th, which was on Saturday, and we weren't able to do it because we were off. So I wanted to save this for today. On August the 9th, 1944, Bill Knowling, lieutenant, a starting fullback for Tennessee from 1940 to 1942, died in action in France fighting in World War II. He had just celebrated his birthday a month before his death. He helped lead the Vols to an SEC title in 1940 and a claimed national title as they went 10-0 that year. There was their third straight undefeated regular season in Tennessee under General Robert Neyland, before Neyland actually was called up to active duty to help train our soldiers for the war. Former Tennessee blocking back and forth pinning instructor Captain Sam Bartholomew discussed Knowling a month after his death and said, quote, "I told him at the time we would like to have him at Benning as an instructor. Bill told me he'd rather go with the guys I've been with wherever they go. Was a great teammate, was all about going into battle with his friends. His number 32 jersey has been retired. So we send a thank you to Bill Knowling as he was killed in World War II on this day, roughly 2 days ago, Saturday, 81 years ago. This day in Tennessee sports history, brought to you by Joe Newber Collision Center. For nearly 50 years, Newber Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. JoeNewberCollision.com, JoeNewberCollision.com.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
The hate for Tennessee among national media continues as you see more and more people saying that the Vols are going to take a step back this year. You see a lot less support for Tennessee than maybe you even did earlier in the season. Many people have said that it is possible they go 4-8 this year because of how things are going. Josh Pate, who said the worst case scenario for Tennessee is 4-8, has now gone even further. Josh Pate recently said on his college football show that he thinks Tennessee is due for a letdown. His quote was, "How far is the Tennessee drop off?" And then he goes, he says he's not going to do glass half empty, and he's going to try to pour into the glass more realistic expectations because people say he's too rosy with college football programs. And that applied specifically to Tennessee. And here's what he said, quote, "They were 10-2 last year. Their over-under win total is 8.5 right now. I bet the under on Tennessee, I think 2 months ago. Offensive line, running back, quarterback, defense, there's just a lot to backfill. There's a lot that's a great big question mark. I don't really think anyone scripted it to go the way it's gone the last few months in Knoxville." Then he adds, "Now I have this whole dissertation that I issued before we went on break, which was I think Josh Heupel could go 8-4 and win this year, meaning that the intangibles and the 2026 and beyond sort of the prism could look good for him as long as they don't get blown out 4 times. But that's an unknown." So what he's saying is they could take a step back, go 8-4, but they could still be fine long term. This all has to do with Tennessee losing Nico and the way they handled the whole thing. But that's not just the only thing that's happened. Also, Tennessee was labeled a Tier 3 program in college football by ESPN last week, ESPN, the football program, ranks all 136 college football programs in tiers. So basically, tier 1A and tier 1B basically are like championship caliber teams. Okay, so that was Ohio State, Texas, Georgia, Oregon, Penn State. Then there's tier 2, playoff expectations, teams with playoff expectations. That was Alabama, Clemson, Miami, Michigan, Notre Dame, LSU. In case you didn't know, that's only 11 teams and 12 teams make the playoff. And so already we're seeing a few teams that are not in the playoff expectation, but will make the playoff. As a matter of fact, that was 11 teams that ESPN labeled from 3 different conferences plus Notre Dame. So there's 2 teams not in the top 2 tiers that will make the playoff inevitably this year. Now, tier 3 is someone in the SEC has to lose games too. Excuse me. Yeah. So basically, these are teams that they think are very good, but because they're in the SEC, they have to lose. And that's where Florida, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Texas A&M are. Now, the explanation for Tennessee that was given for them to be tier 3 is basically that, quote, "We know you're shocked to learn that life is difficult in the SEC. The league so rarely mentions its depth or strength of schedule, and its coaches are reticent to suggest that their teams deserve any additional benefit of the doubt as a result." Oh, wait, they're actually contractually obligated to mention it in every interview, which is a troll on how the SEC always talks about how tough things are. Of course, of those tier 3 programs, Tennessee was the one to actually make the college football playoff last year. So it does feel like they're getting disrespected. This follows Paul Feinbaum saying Tennessee is not a playoff team, which he said earlier in the month. So the expectations for Tennessee continue to collapse. And I'm going to say something straight out the gate that many people haven't said. I'm not going to make a prediction for how good Tennessee is going to be this year. But bank on it. Brought to you by Commercial Bank, member FDIC, life made better. Tennessee will outperform what I think they would have performed because of the limited expectations and what people are saying about them nationally. I think this is helping Tennessee for the season, and it's helping to get them motivated and fired up, and it will allow them to play a little bit above their heads at times as the year goes on. Bank on it. Brought to you by Commercial Bank, FDIC, member FDIC, life made better. The national and public demeaning of Tennessee this year and what they're going to do is going to make them play better than they otherwise would have.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
Now, it seems cliche to say that just because people are talking negative about a team, that's going to motivate them to play better. It does seem very cliche. Okay, everybody says that, and then it rarely ever actually happens. But it's a little bit different for Tennessee this year, and I'm going to break down why. I don't think the talent level is that far off from last year's team. I really don't, honestly. I've already told you guys, look, last year's team went 10-2 and made the college football playoff. This year's team has a slightly harder schedule. Not significantly, but slightly, because Alabama and Florida are on the road instead of just Georgia, and Syracuse is a tougher non-conference game than NC State. This team, though, the quarterback situation, I've already said, I think the quarterback situation this year, whoever starts, and it'll be Joey Aguilar probably, will be better this year than Nico Iamaleava was last year. Just won't be better than Nico Iamaleava would have been this year. So when people talk about the loss of Nico Iamaleava, like that's a big deal. What they're talking about is the loss of what they would have had this year, but not what Tennessee had last year. Nico Iamaleava wasn't that great last year. I think the transition on the offensive line and the loss of Dylan Sampson are bigger deals, honestly. You talk about the losses at receiver. I've said 1,000 times over, I think Tennessee's going to be better at receiver this year because the guys just weren't that good last year. I don't think you could be much worse. So on top of that, I think Tennessee has every reason to be better already, or at least as talented or semi-talented, close to where they were last year on top of that. Now, here's where things get interesting. You see some teams, and you can hear a whole Mike Leach rant about this, about Texas Tech back in 2009, when the Texas Tech team in 2008 that went 11-2 with Graham Harrell and Michael Crabtree. The next year, Texas Tech goes 9-4, should have won about 3 of those games. And Mike Leach goes off and he says, quote, this team has felt like they were entitled to something because the team before them won 11 games. That happens sometimes, even after you lose a bunch of players and you think you're good enough because of what the previous team did. That's not going to be the case for this team because of everything they've been seeing in the media and because of the public humiliation of the departure of Nico Iamaleava that drew them together and the leadership they have with the Leadership Council. Those are all little things that will make them play better. I firmly believe that. It reminds me very much more of the 98 team, which was the 98 team couldn't hide the fact that they lost so much talent and they couldn't ignore it. So they had to come together. The reason the 2009 Texas Tech team, for those who don't know that story, got so excited about themselves was because the narrative had gotten out there that the players actually don't matter as much as Mike Leach. So the team felt that, oh, Mike Leach is still our coach. We're just going to do exactly what Graham Harrell and Michael Crabtree did and we'll be fine. This team doesn't have that approach. I actually feel like because of the way the coverage of it has been, this team knows that they've got a lot to prove. They know they're playing a bit with their backs against the wall. They know how the season is starting with them playing Syracuse and then Georgia in week 3. They know things are going to be difficult. So they've got a lot to prove, a lot more than you typically do have to prove. And here's the really interesting thing when you draw the comparisons between this team and the 1998 Tennessee team. Not only did both teams open the season against Syracuse with the new starting quarterback and a lot to prove, but during week 3, they played what had been their toughest opponent the previous 5 to 6 years as well at home. In Tennessee's case, that will be Georgia this year. In 1998, that was Florida because remember they played Syracuse, then had a bye and then played Florida. It's all adding up, guys. It's all adding up. Now, this year, Tennessee actually doesn't have a bye. They basically have a bye between Syracuse and Georgia because they play ETSU. But I'm saying when you take all this into account, look, if Tennessee beats Syracuse, if they then go, and if they, I mean, again, they just need to squeak out a win against Syracuse. They'll get to Georgia 2-0. They have a really good chance in that game if they're fully healthy. And they could catch Georgia napping because of all the negative coverage surrounding them. Who remembers the 2004 Tennessee-Georgia game? Tennessee the week before, they had 2 freshman quarterbacks. Georgia looked like this was their national championship year with David Green's senior season. Georgia starts the year 4-0. They blow out defending national champs LSU 45-16. The same week, Tennessee loses to Auburn 34-10. Kevin Burnett comes out and says, we'll see Auburn again, saying in the SEC title game, which means that we're going to beat Georgia. They go and upset Georgia the next week on the road. I'm saying there's a lot here, and given how much Tennessee's flying under the radar, there is a lot for them to be excited about. I think it's highly possible, and I mean highly possible, that Tennessee ends up shocking a lot of – I think it's likely that they end up playing better than they really were, because of all this talk, because of all the psychological things that are going on with it at the same time. Portions of the program are brought to you by HoundDogs of Knoxville. Champions look good in orange. HDKnoxville.com. HDKnoxville.com. When we come back, we're going to talk about Derek Rogers and Derek Dooley, and we're going to see what you guys all think about this. I have some thoughts. Stick with us. 2 minutes off the hook sports.
It's a new year, a new day, and Ted Russell Lincoln has an exciting new offer to share. Right now, get a 2024 Lincoln Navigator with 0% APR for 72 months and up to $4,000 in bonus cash. Or drive away in a new 2024 Lincoln Corsair Grand Touring with 0% APR for 60 months and up to $4,500 in bonus cash. It's time to get excited about the ride. Come and see what a luxury car experience truly is at Ted Russell Lincoln Knoxville.
Hello, ma'am. Here to look at that plumbing problem? Oh, boy. Yep. You're going to need a whole new sink.
If this toilet is no good, you're going to need a new one ASAP.
You are not going to believe this.
You're all out of milk. Have you heard about our service plan?
I need to call Scott's.
Scott's Plumbing, your trusted neighborhood plumber since 1977.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Welcome back to Off the Hook Sports. Hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn on your notifications, tell a friend. We are building something great here at Off the Hook Sports, and we want you to be a part of it because lots of great things are happening for our channel right now. It is time for What the H, and it involves more Derek Dooley coverage. Yes, we've been having some fun with Derek Dooley ever since we found out he was running for Senate in Georgia, in the state of Georgia. I've always told you guys Derek Dooley picks the worst timing. I broke it down last week why him choosing to run for Senate as a Republican in Georgia in 2026 was dumb timing when he could have run for Senate as a Republican in Georgia in 2022 and maybe would have actually won in 2022 and unseated Raphael Warnock. Choosing to run in 2026 is going to be more of an uphill battle. That's not to say he can't win it, but it was a dumb time to run. I'll just say that. This is the same guy also who took the Tennessee job at the absolute worst time. He just, again, Derek Dooley has the worst timing on a lot of things. Now, with the news going on about Derek Dooley running for Senate, a former player who was dismissed from the team by Derek Dooley when he was head coach has now spoken out. Robert McVall shared a tweet showing clips of Derek Dooley when he was head coach at Tennessee and said, quote, "No wonder we sucked for 10 years. Some of the stories behind the scenes, how he treated GAs, staff, players, and fans. Makes sense he wants to be a politician." It's a shot at him being a politician. Rick Rogers has commented in response and says, "LOL, you don't even know, brother. No player has had more backdoor nonsense conversations with that man than me. Still, to this day, he needs his spoiled whooped." Rick Rogers has not really spoken much about Tennessee, it feels like, or not made news since he was dismissed from Tennessee way back before the start of the 2012 season. So this is very much a What the H, brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. RickTerryJewelry.com. Where is this all coming from Rick Rogers at this point? Well, Rick Rogers, for those who don't remember, was one of the 2 5-stars in Tennessee's recruiting class in 2010, I believe. Or maybe he was the only one. I'm pulling it up. You guys can tell me, but I know Rick Rogers was one of the 5-stars in Tennessee's recruiting class. The other one might have been, depending on who you looked at, was Juwan James. Juwan James was also in that class, and he was a fringe. Both of them were fringe 5-stars, meaning they were 5 stars on some services and 4 stars on others. But those were the 2 standout ones, and then obviously Justin Hunter and Tyler Bray were in that class. Rick Rogers was one of the future players for Tennessee, although Justin Hunter became more of the go-to guy at Tennessee until Cordero Patterson came. Rick Rogers was the one that everybody was excited about. His first year at Tennessee, he had 11 catches for 167 yards and 2 touchdowns. His second year at Tennessee, Justin Hunter goes down with the season-ending injury. He has 67 catches for 1,040 yards and 9 touchdowns with no Justin Hunter, and also playing with his quarterback, Tyler Bray, being hurt half the season during that time. He's then dismissed from the team. And during the 2012 season, after Justin Hunter and Cordarrelle Patterson were added, he's dismissed from the team, goes to Tennessee Tech, then goes to the NFL, plays 1 year for the Colts in 2013, where he had 14 catches for 192 yards and did have 2 touchdowns. If memory serves correctly, Rick Rogers was dismissed from the team after failing multiple drug tests. Now, with all that in mind, however you think about Derek Dooley, is it fair for Rick Rogers to come out and take shots at Derek Dooley now? And the poll question is up. Who do you side with, Rick Rogers or Derek Dooley? I'm going to tell you guys why I side with Derek Dooley in this situation. And I'm not here to talk about how he treated players and how he was in certain ways. I think a lot of the talk behind Derek Dooley, and I've been very critical of him in certain areas, but I've also been known to be very defensive of Derek Dooley. His meanness to staff and guys like that, you heard the same stuff about Johnny Majors back in the 80s and the 90s. You heard the same stuff about Lou Holtz, okay? You actually heard the same stuff about Nick Saban, too. When you're winning, you look like you're a tough guy developing people. It's when you're losing, you look like someone who's just bad with people, period. That's what it felt like with Derek Dooley a lot of times. Derek Dooley made a lot of mistakes, but he inherited a really tough situation. Not Josh Heupel's situation, to be fair, but he did inherit a really tough situation. Let's not forget what happened. Derek Dooley took over a Tennessee team in 2010 that was on its 3rd head coach in 3 years, was under investigation by the NCAA, and had its roster depleted by Lane Kiffin kicking off half the former recruits and then taking a lot of his own recruits with him to USC and depleting that recruiting class and future recruiting classes. With the investigation in the NCAA that comes in, Tennessee is very limited on the roster in 2010 and 2011. Then in 2011, Mike Hamilton steps down. Dave Hart comes in. Dave Hart publicly undermines Derek Dooley. I think somewhat sabotages him because he wants to make his own hire. And after Dooley's 2nd year, when they lose to Kentucky, which again, poor coaching job by Dooley that whole season, you see Dave Hart come out and publicly undercut Dooley and say, we're not going to renew contracts for the staff. Everybody leaves. Tennessee doesn't have any money or support to hire the guys they want to hire, which is how you get the Sal Sunseri hire. And then 2012 falls apart because of it. Now, taking all that into account, maybe Rick Rogers doesn't like the conversations that were had with him. But again, Rick Rogers didn't have to fail multiple drug tests to get dismissed from the team. He just didn't. That's on him. That's on nobody else. So while Derek Dooley himself may have not been great with people, and there's a lot to criticize there, Rick Rogers is not the one to speak up. I side with Derek Dooley on this, and it's What the H, again, brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. They want to be your jeweler, looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition, rickterryjewelry.com.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
The poll question is up. Who do you side with, Rick Rogers or Derek Dooley? It looks like everybody's disagreeing with me. 86% of you guys side with Rick Rogers. 14 of you guys side with Derek Dooley. Okay, look. I understand why you feel that way. And I understand how Derek Dooley, overall, you would want to side with Rick Rogers. Because one of the things that Dooley did that was so annoying was he spoke to you like he was so much smarter than you when he was in the media. And honestly, like, made you feel like you were dumb for asking the question. And then it turns out that Derek Dooley had 3 straight losing seasons in Tennessee. So who was Derek Dooley to talk about anything? I get that. I understand that. But when you talk about Rick Rogers, again, Rick Rogers had so many issues on his own that I don't think it's really fair to use Rick Rogers to come down on Derek Dooley in Tennessee. I think Rick Rogers had his own issues. Look, we can talk all day, and I will, about whether or not we think something like weed should be illegal and banned in college football or anything like that. But I also have to say that when we're talking about people like Derek Rogers and when we're talking about Derek Dooley, just because Derek Dooley did a lot of things wrong, and he did a lot of things wrong, does not mean that he's in the wrong with people like Derek Rogers, okay? That's just not how it is. Now, Dooley obviously had his own mistakes. There's the whole 13 men on the field against LSU that cost him. But let's think about this, guys. Let's think about how close Dooley was to like actually having success at Tennessee, because he was closer than you think. Derek Dooley, if Tennessee in 2010, if Tennessee doesn't run 13 men on the field against LSU in a substitution mistake, they win that game. They win that game. If they beat LSU that year, they probably are, yes, they lose the next 2 weeks to Georgia and Alabama, but they're probably hype enough and confident enough that they're able to beat South Carolina, which they lost to by 2 scores, but they probably could have won that game in a different environment. I actually think they would beat South Carolina because they'd be riding so high from the LSU win. At that point, you got a 4-4 team, and then they probably they won their last 4 games, so they finished 8-4. But let's say they lose to South Carolina. Let me just give you guys that. Okay, say they lose to South Carolina, and things go the same way the rest of the way, and they finish 7-5 instead of 6-6. And then the whole North Carolina spiking the ball, 13 minutes, their own substitution penalty doesn't happen. And there's actually a runoff in college football. Tennessee very easily is 8-5 that year. They lost because of a dumb substitution penalty and a dumb rule that was manipulated. Tennessee is very close to 8-5. Say they go 8-5. They probably recruit really well in 2011. And then say they do recruit really well in 2011. Say Hunter doesn't go down against Florida. Tennessee may win that game. They probably beat Georgia. They probably beat South Carolina if Tyler Bray doesn't go down. All of a sudden, you're looking at a team, and then if they won those 3 games, they're probably excited enough to beat Kentucky. All of a sudden, what was a 5-7 season is 9-3, and they maybe win their bowl game and go 10-3. Dave Hart can't undercut the staff, so they bring everybody back, and Justin Wilcox is still defensive coordinator. That historically great offense in 2012 is there, and Tennessee, if they had a defense that year, they're beating Florida, they're beating Georgia, they're beating South Carolina, they're beating Missouri. Again, when you're looking at that season, all of a sudden, you're seeing a potential 10-2, 11-1 season, and Dooley may actually have a job still. It all goes back to that first year. It goes back to those 2 fluke penalty games that they lost and the injuries to Bray and Hunter. If those 4 things don't happen, Derek Dooley he might still be coaching at Tennessee. But again, did a lot of things wrong. He deserves to own what he needs to own what he did. I just think that Derek Rogers talking about Dooley that way when he was the one who got himself dismissed from the team, I think he needs to watch what he's saying. But at the same time, Derek Dooley, bad mistake for him to try to run for Senate this time with Georgia. Again, 2026 is an uphill battle as for a Republican in a purple state. The same way 2022 would be for a Democrat in a red state. This is a Democrat in a purple state. This is just, again, it's a midterm. Midterms usually go the opposite way of whatever party the president is. That's just how things work. So I don't know what Derek Dooley was thinking. Portions of the program are brought to you by Peak IV Hydration in South Knoxville and Sevierville. Live your life to the fullest. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate your health with Peak IV Hydration. PeakIVHydration.com. Link is in the chat. Okay, so with the link in the chat and Peak IV Hydration out, we now bring you the stat of the day. And that is brought to you by the UPS Store Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. Stat of the day, UPS 10629 Hardin Valley Road. And the stat of the day is this. Since we're talking about Derek Dooley, I thought I'd do a fun one. Tennessee has 10 1,000-yard receivers in history. 10. 2 of them happened in seasons in which they had losing records. Both were under Dooley. Derek Rogers in 2011 and Justin Hunter in 2012. Every other season when they had a 1,000-yard receiver, they had a winning record. Just thought that's kind of a funny stat. Sorry, I had to troll Dooley a little bit more. Is what it is. Hit that like and subscribe button. Ring the bell. Turn on your notifications. We are brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, BanksandJones.com. Live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville. New and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. When we come back, we're going to discuss Jon Gruden and Jimbo Fisher, and I'm going to tear at least one of them a new one. Stick with us. 2 minutes off the hook sports.
A beacon of hope in a world of high prices. Look to the skies, Knoxville. Super savings is here. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 volume Ford dealer.
Right now, get 0% APR, 0 down, and 0 payments for 90 days on select models, plus 2 years complimentary maintenance.
Come see the super dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
Welcome back to Off the Hook Sports. Caleb Calhoun here. Hit that like and subscribe button. We continue our coverage of the Vols and college football with news surrounding a couple of coaches. And I think it's time to talk about these coaches and why this is ridiculous. Jon Gruden and Jimbo Fisher have both decided they want to return to coaching. Jimbo Fisher said, who took a massive buyout from Texas A&M, walked away with $76 million, by the way, said, quote, "I'm 59, in great shape and healthy. I've had success everywhere we've ever been. The end at Texas A&M, it's unfortunate, but we also had the highest ranked team they ever had there in 2020. Our quarterbacks got hurt. We played with first team, third team. It was hard to get play calling and guys around. Didn't pan out like we needed to, but I still love it." Yeah, your highest ranked year was the COVID year. Okay. And using quarterbacks as an injury. You were at Texas A&M for 6 years. And that's your best selling point. Come on. That's absolutely ridiculous. Also, the way he left Florida State when they were a complete disaster after he left them too. That's ridiculous. More ridiculous. Jon Gruden. Gruden is now a media personality at Barstool Sports. And he said recently, I kid you not, quote, "The only reason I came here is I want to coach again. I'm being honest with you. I do not. I want to coach again. I die to coach in the SEC. I would love it. I would love it." That's a lot of nerve for Jon Gruden, given the fact that Tennessee courted him twice in 2012 and 2017, and he said he wasn't interested, and he wasn't coaching then. He was sitting in the broadcast booth. Then he went to the Raiders. Here's the truth with Jon Gruden, and here's what rubs me the wrong way about him doing this. Jon Gruden likes to be courted. Jon Gruden there is a very famous, I don't know how many cartoon watchers there were from y'all's ages, but when I was growing up, there was a cartoon I watched called Fairly Odd Parents. And Timmy Turner had a crush on this girl named Trixie Tang. And she always ignored him. She always acted like she was better than him. One day, Timmy had to sit next to Trixie on the bus because there were no other seats available. And Trixie goes, I'm ignoring you. Timmy doesn't say anything. Trixie goes again, I said I'm ignoring you. Timmy doesn't say anything. Finally, Trixie looks at Timmy and goes, stop ignoring me, ignoring you. That's Jon Gruden. Jon Gruden is the girl that wants to be courted and never wants to commit. And when you don't court him anymore, he goes, stop ignoring me, ignoring you. That's Jon Gruden, okay? It is so annoying. It is so grating. It is so frustrating. And Jon Gruden is one of the most annoying people in the world because people who do that sicken me. The people that want to be courted, they want you to approach them, and then when you don't, they melt down. Jon Gruden had no problem being courted by SEC schools all the time. By the way, it wasn't just SEC schools. It wasn't just Tennessee. For those who don't know, Texas made a run at Jon Gruden too. He turned them down. Jon Gruden, though, wouldn't just turn these schools down. He would flirt with them non-stop, okay? Remember, when the Tennessee rumors were flying in 2017, the groomers, as we called them at the time, Jon Gruden didn't reject them all. He took photo ops of himself in Knoxville and let the news get out there when Paul Feinbaum even reported that boosters wanted to cobble the money together. And then at the very end, he ends up telling them, he strings them along. They finally realize he's not interested and they have to move on. That actually was a big reason the coaching search went the way it did. It's so annoying for Jon Gruden to do that. He finally gets the job he wants in the NFL. He gets fired because of a scandal. I don't need to get into everything that went in with that. But the point of the fact of the matter is, now he wants to get back into coaching again with nobody interested in him. He's begging for a job. Now that he wants people to be interested in him and nobody's courting him, he does as, I would die to coach in the SEC again. What a joke. What a joke. People like that sick of me. And Jimbo Fisher is just an excuse maker. Okay, Jimbo Fisher is just an excuse maker. They both annoy me. Gruden annoys me way more, though. Jimbo Fisher is just trying to get back into coaching, and I think he just wants something to do. Fisher was really selling himself, though, at the same time. On the other side, he goes, being able to coach, I would. I've won 72% of my games, won 80% of my playoff games. I've been fortunate to win a national championship as a head coach and assistant. I miss the relationships with players. I'd be very interested in still doing it. I still think I've got a lot to give. I'd like to get back out there. Jimbo Fisher's problem is just that he's too old school with his way of thinking and how he does things. All right, so we're going to play a little hot or cold, and it's brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. City Heat and Air, 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. cityheatingandair.com. We've talked about coaches on the hot seat and where they could go next year. We're going to talk about coaches on the hot seat now and which one of these schools could hire Jon Gruden or Jimbo Fisher. So we're going to play a little hot or cold. Sorry, it wasn't brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. It was brought to you by Sports Treasures. Sports Treasures carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow more on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia daily updates. Facebook.com/Sports Treasures TN. Facebook.com/Sports Treasures TN. Hot or cold? Let's dive in now. Schools that could be looking for a coach next year. And I'm going to tell you if I'm hot or cold on them hiring Jon Gruden. Okay, we'll just stick with the SEC first. Arkansas could be looking for a coach next year. I'm hot on them potentially hiring Jimbo Fisher. I'm cold on them hiring Jon Gruden. Jon Gruden wouldn't take that job. As much as he wants to coach in the SEC, Jon Gruden wants an easier job than that. Okay, he doesn't want to work that hard to recruit, and you have to work hard to recruit at Arkansas. Auburn. I'm hot on both Jimbo Fisher and Jon Gruden. Really hot on Jimbo Fisher potentially getting that job. For those who don't remember, Jimbo Fisher actually cut his teeth coaching at Auburn from 93 to 98 as the quarterback's coach there. He was the quarterback's coach for Auburn when Auburn lost to Tennessee in the SEC title game when Peyton Manning was there. That's actually how he helped rise through the ranks in the coaching circles. So they could really hire Jimbo Fisher. Watch out for that. Florida, moving on from Billy Napier. Oh, I'm extremely hot on either Jimbo Fisher or Jon Gruden going to Florida. For Jimbo Fisher, that's the ultimate win since he left Florida State and he gets to go to Florida, his rival now. He would absolutely do it. It's an easy place to recruit. Now it's even easier with the SEC and ACC gap happening in Florida State and Miami stuck in the ACC along with UCF. So I'm sure Jimbo Fisher would do it. And yes, Jon Gruden would do it too. Jon Gruden coached in Tampa for so many years. Jon Gruden would love to coach in Florida. That's a job they would both take, and they both might get hired for that. I think Florida would go for Jon Gruden, though, more than anybody else. All right. LSU could be looking for a job. Yeah, I'm hot on LSU. I'm hot on LSU for both of them. Jon Gruden would love to be down there to be able to get the Louisiana kids, And also, Jimbo Fisher, when I just talked about cutting his teeth, he also cut his teeth as LSU's offensive coordinator, was there for 7 years, won a national championship with Nick Saban. So Jimbo Fisher is very familiar with LSU. Don't sleep on them. LSU's a big one. So yes, I'm hot on LSU. Finally, Oklahoma. I'm cold on Jon Gruden in Oklahoma. It's not glamorous enough for him. If they move on from Brent Venables, it's just not glamorous enough for Jon Gruden, so I don't think he would do it. Jimbo Fisher would, though. Jimbo Fisher would take the Oklahoma job. He just wants to coach a premier program. So, yes, I'm hot on Oklahoma. Now, a couple other schools that could be looking for coaches that people are rumbling about. Mississippi State. Some people think they might fire Jeff Lebby. I don't think they would, but if they did, I'm cold on Mississippi State. Neither coach would go there. Same with Kentucky. If they fire Mark Stoops, neither coach would go there. Not happening. Hot or Cold brought to you by Sports Treasures. Carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports daily updates. Facebook.com/SportsTreasuresTN. Facebook.com/SportsTreasuresTN. We're going to talk about schools beyond the SEC after a quick message from Sports Treasures.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
All right, the poll question is up. Who would you rather hire, Jon Gruden, Jimbo Fisher? Both would drive me to drink. You guys can talk about that. Let's go to some national programs with schools on the hot seat and look at that. Now, let's go to, what about Florida State, guys? What if Florida State fires Mike Norvell? Jimbo Fisher's not taking that job back. I'm pretty cold on that. Not happening. But Jon Gruden might. I could see Jon Gruden at Florida State. Look, just being at Florida would be a big deal for him. So, yes, Florida State, I'm hot on them, potentially on Jimbo Fisher, on Jon Gruden, maybe landing there at some point. Let's keep rolling. We go over to the Big Ten. Are there any premier coaches on the hot seat? Sharon Moore. Would either of them go to Michigan? No. I don't think Jimbo Fisher likes to be in the North. Jon Gruden has to do a little bit extra work to recruit at Michigan. I don't think that's going to happen. So, sorry. Not happening. That's probably the only, and then the other premier job outside of the SEC that they could potentially take. USC, Lincoln Riley. What if they fire him? Now, this is an interesting one, and I'm hot on both of them. Jon Gruden and Jimbo Fisher potentially going to take the USC job. That would be very intriguing if they did. I don't know if they will, but if they did, it would be incredible. So watch out for USC and the possibilities that one of them looks for Jimbo Fisher or Jon Gruden going forward. Now, the poll question, who would you rather hire, Jon Gruden, Jimbo Fisher? Both would drive me to drink. 75% say both would drive me to drink. 25% say Jon Gruden. 0% say Jimbo Fisher. I saw Wisconsin was mentioned. No, neither are taking the Wisconsin job. Wisconsin requires a special, specific type of coaching that neither would be okay with, particularly Jon Gruden, who runs more variations of the West Coast offense. This is why Michigan wouldn't work either. The power coast is what you want to run when you're at Michigan. Now, Jim Harbaugh came from the West Coast offense and developed the power coast when he was at Michigan and did it very well. But he was already developed in the power coast because that's what he was running at Stanford, and he threw in the West Coast concepts when he was at San Francisco. So I do think that going forward is why Wisconsin's a bad fit for either of them. I would think Jimbo Fisher needs to recruit the talent. Jon Gruden runs an offense that just wouldn't fit in Michigan or Wisconsin and what they need to run. So the schools I'm hottest on are the Florida schools. I think Florida is the premier job. Look for one of them to potentially end up at Florida next year. Probably Jon Gruden. I'm saying it right now. There's a very good chance Jon Gruden's at Florida next year. We'll see how that goes. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. We broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. Smash that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn your notifications on, tell a friend. We're building something great here at Off the Hook Sports, and we want you to be a part of it. You guys have a great rest of your day. We are back on tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. We broadcast live every weekday at 10 a.m. Eastern. So I will see you guys again tomorrow. Thanks again for tuning in today with Caleb.